How's it going, crypto community? So today I have a debate for you between Peter Schiff, who is arguing in the defense of gold, or debating in the defense of gold, and Barry Silberman, who is debating in the sense of Bitcoin, which he uses the term liberally, as we've covered in a few articles, I believe, that oftentimes when individuals say Bitcoin in public, they're actually referring to the crypto ecosystem as a whole, and you will see that at the end during the Q&A, or at the closing statements rather. It's very evident. So I won't get into that anymore. I don't want to spoil it until we get into it. So if you're not familiar with my channel, I'm Jade Martian. I'm here to present as balanced of a view as possible, but I also want to make sure that people have some kind of factual background. If I ever list a statistic that you don't believe, please go Google it, and if you find that I am mistaken, even by like just a small amount, please put it in, because I do juggle a lot of numbers around, so I do sometimes slip. Like I remember saying that there's like $37 million at one point or $37 trillion US dollars out there in the ecosystem at one point, and I think I ended up Googling it on stream and it was like 36. I was like, so like I'll sometimes misremember, but I usually have the digits right and usually the first number right. The other ones just take those with a grain of salt, right? Within my calculations. Okay, so in all seriousness, let's hop into this. It's a really awesome debate. I feel kind of bad for Barry because he didn't get a lot of talking time, because Peter is a very overpowering debater. But at any rate, I'll probably have to pause at least a few times during Peter, because he is very long-winded. We apparently share that in common. But thanks to our shared commonality, I am able to see what he's doing oftentimes, and it's a tactic of overwhelming your opponent. There's actually a fallacy dedicated to what he does in this debate, so we can get into that too a little bit, but we're going to primarily focus on the points presented, and I'm going to try and, like I said, be as unbiased as possible, but still help you, somebody who may not understand what these people are talking about, follow along and be like, oh, wait, what? So if you enjoy my content after this, please hit that like, hit that subscribe, and if you really enjoy it, ring that bell so that you can be notified the second that I create something new, right? I hope that you enjoy, and without further ado, let's hop right into this debate, which starts with a great little ad.
Why did you invest in gold? Are you living in the past? In a digital world, gold shouldn't weigh down your portfolio. You see where things are going. Digital currencies like Bitcoin are the future. They're secure, borderless, and unlike gold, they actually have utility. Leave the pack behind. It's time to drop gold. Go digital. Go Grayscale.
Alright, so was that not great? I told you. I'm sure. So just remember, they're saying digital, not even Bitcoin, right? So Barry knows what's up.
Good morning. Thanks for coming. I wanted to start off with a quick poll. Can we get a show of hands for how many people in the audience own gold? Few here.
Is anybody raising their hand?
Yeah, there's at least a dozen out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of lights.
All right, how many people here own Bitcoin? Okay,
Friendly audience.
a few more.
Well, there's a sucker born every day.
All right, I wanted to hit you with some numbers. Since early 2009, when Bitcoin first began trading, gold has returned 47%. Bitcoin, over its entire 10-year history, has returned more than 60 million%. So it's off the charts. Peter, why would you still want to own gold?
Well, first of all, that's irrelevant. I mean, every bubble, starts out low. I mean, the people who are making money in Bitcoin are the people who are taking advantage of that and selling. And there's still a lot of air that's going to come out of this bubble. But looking at his commercial, I didn't realize we were getting free commercials. I should have had one. But he depicts all these people like lugging around these big, heavy bricks of gold. I mean, those would be multi-million-dollar bars of gold if they even made them that big. I mean, most people that have gold, you can carry all their gold in their pocket. You wouldn't even know it was there.
You have some in your pocket, right?
Yeah, I do. I brought this is real money. This is gold, but it doesn't weigh a lot. But as long as we're, I should do a little history though to understand, people understand the difference between money and currency. Because I also brought here, this is a 20, right? And most people think this is $20, right? It's not $20, right? I mean, it says $20 on it over here, but it also says Jackson on it. I mean, I'm not holding Andy Jackson in my hand, and I'm also not holding $20. So what is this? You can read right here. It tells you what it is. It says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. So it's a note, right? It's a note of the Federal Reserve, and a note is an obligation to pay something. Well, what is the Federal Reserve obligated to pay me because I have one of their notes? Nothing. But once upon a time, when the Federal Reserve first started in 1913, the 20 looked different. Because over here it said, this note is legal tender and is redeemable in lawful money. And then here it said, paid to the bearer on demand, $20. So what was the $20? This is what you got. So this was currency, right? It was a IOU for real money. And gold is the real money, right? Gold has been money for thousands of years. Our founding fathers made gold legal tender in the United States. But the reason that gold became money, in Barry's video, he says that, well, gold doesn't have any utility. Gold is the most useful metal there is. I heard, Novogratz was up here yesterday saying that gold is the only metal that has no use. Gold has more use than any metal out there. Anybody who has a cell phone has gold. It's in the cell phone. So a lot of people should have raised their hands. If you have a cell phone, you've got gold, right? It's in all the computer chips that make Bitcoin, and it's a store of value. You see these cufflinks here? They're made of 24 karat gold. There's 50 grams of gold in each one of these cufflinks. And the reason why gold is a store of value is you can melt these cufflinks down in 1,000 years. And then you can take that gold and use it to make a computer chip or a cell phone, right? Gold does not lose any of its properties over time, right? Gold is the most liquid commodity. That's why it's money, right? It became money because it satisfied the qualities of money better than any other commodity. Now, what Bitcoin is like fiat money. Because in 1971, right, when we went off the gold standard, we just have this piece of paper. And since there's no gold backing this up, what gives this value? Why does this have any value? Well, one reason is because there's a tradition of using it. I mean, there's prices denominated in these, and contracts and bonds and insurance policies. But also, this is all the government accepts in payment of taxes. They only accept Federal Reserve notes. So if you're in America and you don't want to go to jail, you need to accumulate these. But what really gives it value.
All right, so I gotta pause right here because that was actually the first time Peter slipped up. Everything that he said up until just that last bit about this is how you pay your taxes, most everybody who's been in this space for any amount of time knows, and actually many new people may know this already. It may actually be what got you into cryptocurrencies, but you can now pay your taxes in Bitcoin. The United States, many states, but also the Fed now accepts Bitcoin as tender. So he just implied to the audience that, hey, you have to pay your taxes in this, so haha, this is the money. No, sir. We're talking about decentralized money. And guess what? Central systems Central systems will adopt decentralized currencies. Why? Because they allow for fair competition. And what is fair competition? Fair competition is a environment which does not have any individual who needs to be at the center and thus in a position to need to feel the need to vie for power to maintain their power, right? Because once you possess power, you desire them to maintain power. And once you acquire power, you often desire the thirst for more power, right? This is key in all social systems, right? Any system that involves humans, be that money, the the economy, education, mathematics, physics, everything that springs from mathematics, phone, social media, like these concepts, they are empowered through our desire to collect around what we view as ideals within this space, or within any space, right? And so what happens then is over time you see power consolidate, and consolidated power, as the proverb goes, corrupts, right? And so that's why all these systems are jumping ship, because they now are at this point, just so happens, this point in history, where everything that they've done is now just about to spiral out of control. It's just slipping through their fingers. They're doing everything they can now just to keep the economy alive. If you are an older person than me, you've watched this, you've been hip to this jive for a while. I caught on somewhat early, I believe, since I caught on like around 21, 22. That's when I became really obsessed with what's actually going on in the greater scheme of things. So I started comparing news channels against each other and seeing like, okay, what are they both saying? And then what are they both not saying? What's the debate? And then I try and find out, a resolution to the debate that fits the thing that they're both saying, right? Whatever makes the most sense in the overall scheme. That's how I operate as an entity when it comes to trying to rationalize the insanity of the world that we now see before us on the internet, right? So, yeah, I went on a little bit more of a tangent than I need to, but what he is doing is, it upsets me. So I had to stop and be like, okay, listen though, just in case you don't know, you can actually pay for your taxes in cryptocurrencies. Right now it's only Bitcoin, I believe. I need to do some research. I think that there might be more, but I'll look into that. But let's hop back into this. Let him finish his point in educating. Actually, he is not lying, right? When it comes to how whatever he said. But there's another point that he makes that I really want to pause and be like, he had an epiphany. But we'll see. And of course, welcome to Jade Martian stream, or videos, where we always get a brave ad, right? Apologies.
Value is confidence, faith that in the future people will accept this in exchange for goods and services. But history, if history is any guide, all fiat currencies ultimately collapse because the confidence is lost. Bitcoin has a lot more in common with this than with this, real money, except Bitcoin isn't legal tender. You can't use Bitcoin to pay taxes. The only thing giving Bitcoin value is because somebody thinks a greater fool is going to pay a higher price. Right? It's all the idea that it's going to go up and you'll be able to sell it. But confidence is going to be lost and Bitcoin is going to collapse along with all the other cryptocurrencies.
I think Peter's strategy for this debate is just to talk for 30 minutes. So,
well, I got 25 more.
Yeah. All right. So I guess I brought a prop as well. So this is where I store money, and I think most of you do as well. Equating gold to money at this point is ridiculous. It may have history, but wampum and rocks and salt once played a role as money. Nowadays, money is digital. You can't walk into Starbucks with your chunk of shiny metal there and go buy a cup of coffee. And you like to highlight this so-called utility use of gold, and I think I'm here to set the record straight on that. Gold bugs like to talk about gold being used in cell phones and electronics. About 15 minutes ago, I tweeted out data that was put out by the World Gold Council that highlighted the demand for gold over the past 10 years. And just so you guys have this data as well, I'm going to just point out a couple things. Number one, electronics, which Peter is referring to, the use of gold last year was $10 billion, which represents 6% of annual gold demand. The World Gold Council includes a category of technology, which is 7.5%. You know what they include in technology? Dentistry. Dentistry is the World Gold Council's view of what technology is. But what's really more important is that over the past 9 years, the use of electronics in gold, the demand, has dropped by 15%. Yet, cell phone sales are up 500%. So Peter, explain to me, why is it that 5-10 years from now, the use of gold in electronics is going to be the primary driver of gold demand?
It's not.
So that's the reason I didn't touch on him also making the fallacy in regards to his epiphany. I guess I missed the epiphany. My actual bad. I thought he was after that slip up, but he, prior to the dollar incident, also made the notion that, you know, the only similarity it has to gold is that, you know, it's in these computer chips that, you know, are make the power this thing, or whatever he said, you know, whatever, to whatever degree. And you could see that he paused during it. If you go back in the video, I was considering hopping back to try and find it, but I figure you can just go back and rewatch that little bit to catch that. So, but to Barry's point, you know, it's the primary use for gold in the future is for, you know, computational power, which powers the blockchain. It's almost as if this is the best way to transition gold from this thing that's stored in vaults to this thing that literally creates a web, you know, around the world through the utilization of gold within every one of our devices that you're listening to me on now, powering this amazing economy that is going to bloom from this, because it's going to be decentralized and therefore far more balanced and just fair, right? And a economy where fairness is enforced by a system that men do not have the ability to tamper with to any degree, that would therefore make the system unfair to the collective who would be involved in preventing such things from happening because of their participation in that network, right? So the idea is that what this system represents is a system that, you know, I don't want to sound utopianist, but really could help end most regional conflicts, right? Simply for no other reason, if for no other reason, then war would become far too expensive for a nation to actually engage with. So the only thing that we would really see is blustering of force, but at the end of the day, a dramatic reduction in how much anyone is spending, including the United States, in regards to military industrial complexes. So ultimately, I see what blockchain has in store for us if we can get these systems implemented quickly enough and get all skeptics in seats of power either on board or replaced as democratically as possible to represent our community, then we have an ever brighter potential of actually escaping the fiat disaster that has brought many of us into this space, and is why most of us actually have a lot of respect for Peter Schiff and Barry Silbert. For anybody that is aware of Barry, if you're not, what the heck, how do you know about me and not Barry Silbert? You need to get on Twitter and follow this guy. He's big news, right? So, you know, already gone on a little bit more than I probably should have, but let's hop back into this, see what Peter has to in response to Barry's question.
Though the primary driver is jewelry. That's about half the demand for gold, and that's been going on for thousands of years, and it's not going to stop. I mean, do you have a wife?
Yes.
All right, well, you know that you're going to be buying gold jewelry. But you're telling me that there's not that much use for gold. Okay, tell me one thing that you can do with your Bitcoin, other than give it to somebody else.
Okay.
What can you do with it?
$50 billion. You know what that number is? That's the amount of money annually people pay to send money cross-border. $50 billion. It's a $500, $600 billion cross-border market. So if Bitcoin continues to grow, it is going to absolutely save upwards of 10, 20, $50 billion.
Oh, no, it's not. I mean, first of all, when you're transferring money, you're actually transferring something. When you're transferring Bitcoin, you're transferring nothing. But if people actually use Bitcoin on the scale that you're describing, the cost of doing it, the amount of energy that would be required to maintain that network would dwarf the cost that you're talking about. I mean, we can't even afford it. We don't have enough energy to power the network that would be required. I mean, when you
Man, isn't it so great? I'm sorry, I had to pause him there, but isn't it so great that we as XRP investors don't have to worry about this argument? Look at him there. He's like, I don't even want to have to answer this because I know what's up. I'm just using the media-friendly terminology here and talking about Bitcoin, right? Oh, I can't wait till the end of this. This is so fantastic, and it speaks volumes to what is really going on. At least to me, as somebody who's been researching this for so long, and who has followed Barry pretty closely on Twitter, so it's pretty clear he's a friend of Ripple and XRP.
You mine gold, you mine it once. It takes real resources to get this out of the ground, but then that's it. You're done, right? Bitcoin requires a continuous expenditure of electricity to validate every single transaction that happens on that network. So it's a very expensive.
Let's go back to the question of use cases, though, because this is really an important question. I mean, what can Bitcoin be used for today?
Right. Okay. So remittance I mentioned. The transfer of value around the world instantaneously and basically free has
It's not free.
potential. It's 3 cents to send a Bitcoin transaction.
How high did the cost go when all of a sudden everybody started trading it and the cost skyrocketed up to, like, 30, 40 bucks, 50 bucks? But how much?
Actually, it went even higher. I remember seeing reports of people paying upwards of $100+ at peak. It was lunacy. But that was a scaling issue. There have been extra layers added onto the network. Lightning Network is relatively far along in production from my understanding, and in relatively moderate use, at least in most testnet scales. I'm not sure of the scale of adoption because I haven't followed Bitcoin so long, but even Bitcoin is far more scalable now than it was in 2017. XRP, however, it's already ready to scale to the entirety of all global transactions, thanks to Cobalt Network being placed on top of their original platform. They don't even say how many they have anymore, It's not even a talking point of how many transactions they have. They just say they can do the whole world now because it's that much, right? But I feel bad for Barry because he has to come at this from a honest perspective for a Bitcoin advocate, even though he knows of technologies that are better, right?
I'll talk about that. Forget about the fact. I'll give you the fact that you can exchange it, right? I'm saying apart from that, because money, in order to be money, it has to actually have a value independent of being a medium of exchange, right? So
like dentistry. Like dentistry.
No, well, dentistry, yes. I'd say about 1% of the gold every year goes for dentistry. I have gold in my teeth. You have a crown, there's gold in there, right? And that's one of the many uses that gold has, because gold can store its value. That's what's unique. That's what I said. My cufflinks, in 1,000 years, that gold is not going to change. I can drop it in the ocean. You can find it in 1,000 years. It will retain all of its properties, and it can be used as if it was brand new, right?
So let's first stop him, because again, he's really long-winded during this, and I want to make sure to address a lot of things he says that Barry just doesn't get the chance to. So what he's saying as far as gold, well, remember what we said earlier. Gold is the lifeblood of this new collective consciousness we are creating as a species that we know it as the internet, but it is a collective consciousness. That is what this is, right? It's just a more dystopian version than, you know, high fantasy predicted, because instead of having this synchronicity between our ideals, there's this dissynchronicity, this cognitive dissonance, right? And we need to alleviate that, in my opinion, right? So I'm actually going to split this up into two, because I just realized this is going to be an hour long if I don't. But so the next part, I'm going to just jump straight into it after I do just my my little plug. But let's finish hearing out his next point, and we will continue on. Ads! Come on now. I am so sorry, viewer, but I don't have the competency yet with a video editing software to be able to edit these down for you a little bit, just to cut those kind of things out in the future. Promise.
Is an improvement over seashells and wampum and other forms of money. Bitcoin would represent going backwards. That wouldn't be an advancement. That would be worse. There is no way that it can even function as money. It's not even going to be able to function as currency.
Well, why do you think Bitcoin will hold its value? I mean, is that what you're saying?
But it has no value to hold.
So what I think gold bugs don't appreciate is there is a generational shift in investor mindset that's happening. Over the next 25 years, $68 trillion of wealth is going to be handed down from boomers, Gen X, Gen Ys, and millennials. And I can assure you that the younger generation of investors, many of you here apparently agree with this, don't view gold the same way that our parents or grandparents did. We did not grow up on a gold standard. We did not grow up during a time of war. So as that $68 trillion gets handed down, it is not going to stay in gold. Now, is it going to, whatever is in gold right now, is it all going to go into Bitcoin? No, of course not. But gold is an $8 trillion market cap asset class. Bitcoin's $100 billion. So a lot has to go right. Or frankly, in Peter's view, a lot has to go wrong for an $8 trillion market class, asset class to double in price. At $100 billion for Bitcoin, it really does not take a lot for Bitcoin to outperform gold over the next 10 years.
So you think Bitcoin will outperform gold? And let's put this in perspective. Today, Bitcoin's trading at about $6,000. Gold's at about $12.80 per ounce. Do you think gold...
So before she even finishes her question about gold, let's be real about the statistic that he just gave, right? Gold is worth so much. There's so much value already stored in gold. And it's only lost value as we've entered the technological revolution. You can say that's due to suppression, manipulation, whatever you want. You could definitely say that about the silver markets, because that's actually documented. We won't jump into that, though. You can go research that yourself. Anyways, this is why I love this debate, right? Because Barry's coming out here with just like some cold hard facts that a lot of people in the mainstream media don't want to accept. And so if you've caught wind of the fact that like most of this is me like really coming out and being like, okay, here's where Peter effed up, here's where Peter effed up, and here's how he did, right? If you caught that, that's because that's what he did, you know, unfortunately. I do have a lot of respect for Peter Wright. Like, I think that he's spot on when it comes to what's been going on in the economy, and that's really what actually helped lead me to Bitcoin, because I was trying to figure out, a way to invest in the collapse, right? To find a way to better myself from the collapse, and that's how I found crypto. Really, like it was him, and then I ended up hearing Max Kaiser saying a lot of the same things, and so that led me down a rabbit hole that ended up having me investing in Bitcoin by the end of 2017. After years of listening to Max Kaiser sitting there telling me, buy Bitcoin, hey, you better buy Bitcoin. But his character, the character that he plays is so hard for me to believe that it's so hard for me to trust him. But I think that's actually his shtick. Like, I think that's actually why I find him interesting, because I'm always drawn to just think he's just speaking crap when he does that character of his. But then when I actually go and look up, anytime I've ever looked up anything, I'm not saying everything they ever says is truthful. I'm sure the man has some degree of being bought to some degree. I mean, he's on RT, right? That's his primary network. Like, no offense, Russia. Best wishes to you. You know, I know there's a lot of Bitcoin and crypto investors out there, but just like, you know, it's everybody's media is skewed to one degree or another. It's just a fact of life, right? So I'm trying to keep in mind that I am talking to a global audience too, and I don't want to have anybody think that I don't have everybody's best interest. Like, the way I see it, we're a global community now. That's what the internet is. But you know, I've already given enough philosophy. We're at 14 minutes. So that was enough philosophy. That was enough of me rambling and giving my insight on this first half. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, once again, please hit that like, smash that subscribe, ring that bell, and if you have any comments, critiques of my style, or anything that you think would help me be more, help me bring points across better for you, my listeners, please leave your opinions down in the comments section below. I make it a point to try and respond to literally every single comment I get, at least to some degree. If nothing else, I'm going to acknowledge you, if it's just like a thank you or whatever. So I appreciate your patronage, you know, your viewership and your attention. It's very valuable to you, and therefore it's extremely valuable to me, because I feel honored that you've listened this far in this video, a probably 30-minute video. Thank you. You're awesome. Whoever you are. Seriously, whoever you are, put that comment down there. Because you have a 30-minute attention span. That's kind of cool. We should talk. Seriously, put that comment down there. Alright. As always, this has been Jade Martian, and I'll see you on Mars.